Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to talk about something we love quite a bit on this podcast. That, of course, being movies and TV and sometimes video games and bears and sex and all kinds of things. We're the Movie Bears podcast, but there's lots of things that we sometimes talk about, but movies is typically the big focus. And this week, we've got quite a big show coming up for you. We're going to talk more about the MBP Awards here in just a few moments. Looks like we've got a couple of folks who are joining us in the live chat already. Ben Woolley says, hi, sexy bears. Hey, Ben. Speaking of sexy bears, good to see you. Welcome. And Hamstrack says, yay, I missed you guys. Glad to see you back. Hammy, welcome back yourself. Good to see you. And Mary Meadows as well. Mary, welcome to the show. Well, before we jump into our MBP Awards, let me introduce you to my co-hosts. It's been a couple weeks since we recorded. I don't know if y'all heard, but I used the term y'all in solidarity. Well, Austin was without power and water for quite a while. That knocked us out partially. And then I had work craziness and Jim had scheduling stuff. And anyway, we're back. Jim Pugliafico, how the hell are you?
I'm good. I'm back, of course. We didn't have Texas storm apocalypse to deal with on our end like Will did, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that. But I'm glad to be here. I'm ready to get back into it. We're going to close off 2020 officially with this podcast because we're going to hand out our awards, so I'm happy.
Indeed. Well, glad that you're here to help us do that, sweetheart. Feels weird to close off a year in March, but like COVID has delayed the Oscars, has delayed the Golden Globes.
That's right.
Yep. It delayed the MBP Awards. It's a thing. It happens. But Will Lindis is here too. Will, have you fully recovered from snowpocalypse yet, or are you still dealing with some aftershocks?
It's been kind of rough here, all things told. At the same time as myself and literally millions of other Texans were without power and heat during single-digit temperatures, my house got down into like the 30s a couple of nights. That's inside as we're like huddled in the dark for warmth. At the same time of this, I had an emergency room visit over the last couple of weeks too that I've been dealing with the fallout from, which happened sort of around the time that the roads were really icy and made it kind of doubly scary. So I'm glad that we're here right now. I'm glad that I'm here right now. And I'm glad that, I feel very fortunate grand scheme of things because a lot of people did not make it out of what happened here in Texas without structural damage to their homes, massive several $1,000s electricity bills, or even like there's been like loss of life, people still recovering from not having like access to food and water. We made it through all of that. And so we're very fortunate for that and very cognizant of the fact that many didn't.
Well, we're super glad that you made it through it. It's weird. I can imagine how you folks were suffering through it, especially without heat, electricity. It's a super helpless feeling, like you're trying to think of how you can fix things or make things better for yourselves. And there were some great people in Texas who banded together to help each other out, which was awesome to see. But still, the damage from that is still being felt, I'm sure. Some people, like you said, didn't quite get through it, and the ones who did are still probably stinging from the effects of it. So we're just grateful that things are to come back to normal for you guys.
They're getting back to normal, which for being someone who lives here in Texas isn't always good. Today's normal is another bit
normal
of the
Texas.
normal.
Texas normal.
Yeah, we have new shitty things happening today.
It's good to start getting back to normal, and I know being down for a couple weeks, it's kind of delayed some things for us too, and really glad that we can jump back into things this week. And what a great opportunity to do our MBP Awards, big annual award show we like to put on. For me, this is more fun than the Oscars. So I can't wait to get to that. But real quick, Pasquale says, hey, looking good, lads. Well, hey, Pasquale. Looking good yourself. I may have just looked at your Facebook profile picture and ooh, is it a little warm in here? All right. Well, let's do this. Will, if you don't mind, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the MBP Awards? We have a bunch of new folks since we did this last year. So maybe just tell us a bit about what we're doing and why, and kick us off.
Absolutely. So MBP Awards is one of my favorite episodes that we do because it is a celebration of all things film, in the same way that our top 10 lists are. But this lets us sort of peel back some of the categories a bit and celebrate not just this was my favorite movie, this was my second favorite movie, but some of the moments, some of the scenes, some of the people both in front of and behind the camera that helped make those magical moments. You see, there's a lot of like awards around this time of year. You know, we just came off of the Golden Globes. Say what you will about the Golden Globes. I'll agree with them if they're negative. We have the Oscars coming up, you know, and we said, you know, well, fuck it. Like if we each year, you know, we celebrate the awards and we enjoy the pomp and the circumstance of them, but we always have a few bones to pick. And we thought, you know, well, fuck it. If the other awards aren't going to get it right, why don't we get it right? So the MBP Awards have been going on since 2015. So yeah, we're a few years deep on this one. There's going to be a total of 10 categories that we're going to go through here. Each of us picked our winner for that category, and we also have a few listener picks that were submitted through our website in advance of tonight's episode, so we'll be reading those off as well. I do want to warn everyone though, since we are talking about movies and some of those like amazing scenes, like the scene that makes you say hell yeah, or the sexiest scene, things like that, there's the potential for some spoilers in what we're going to talk about. And we're not going to have like, you know, deep dives on every single one, but just disclaimer, you know, you might, there might be a spoiler for a movie that comes up. So with all of that said, we have 10 categories all told. First one up is the biggest shocker, the movie that shouldn't have been good and yet somehow was. And Jim, I think we're going to kick that over to you.
Okay, so I get to lead it off with the biggest shocker, our first category. For me, biggest shocker means like this is a movie that I might have heard about or maybe not heard about at all and went into it thinking, oh, this is, you know, this one's probably going to not be great. And this movie for me, and then at the end, you're like, oh my God, that movie was pretty darn good to like, oh my God, that blew my socks off. For me, last year, that movie was a movie called Underwater. This is kind of the sci-fi horror mashup movie that like it was way better than it probably had any right to be. I mean, the cast it runs from amazing to like, oh my God, like this could be a disaster. Like you have Kristen Stewart, who we love, Vincent Cassell, who we love. And then you got like TJ Miller, you know, John Gallagher Jr., who's fine. But yeah, I just, you know, we had come off the last few years of, you know, 47 meters down, you know, ruins or, you know, underwater ruins or whatever the fuck the name of that movie was. That was really terrible. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Another underwater movie that's going to be really bad. But this one actually was done right. It was suspenseful. It was funny in spots, well acted for the most part. I really dug this movie. It was kind of a surprise of the year for me. So yeah, Underwater gets my biggest shocker for last year.
All right. Awesome. And folks, as you're listening along at home, if you're on the live stream, feel free to, you know, drop your votes for these categories in the live chat as well. Babe, interesting choice. I'd completely forgotten about Underwater until you just mentioned it. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of liked that.
Yeah,
I didn't think I would, but I kind of liked it.
There weren't that many that turned me around quite as much as that movie last year. From going in with very low expectations to coming out pretty impressed.
Yeah, that's awesome. For me, the biggest shocker, same reason, something that I didn't expect I was going to really enjoy. It was something that I watched because, let's face it, I watch every Disney Pixar film. But this one had heavy elements of jazz music, which I really don't like jazz music at all. And it has Tina Fey, who, all due respect to Tina Fey, she's a very talented comedian. I don't know. I've gotten to the point where Tina Fey in something is like Tina Fey. Like she's almost a caricature of herself for me. So Soul, which came out on Christmas Day, barely squeaks in as a 2020 movie. I didn't think I was going to like that much. And it ended up, if you go back and listen to our top films of 2020 episode, it made my top 10 list. It completely blew me away. And to this day, it's changed the way that I live my life. I try to live more in the moment now. I don't want to spoil too much, but I think the movie has a really cool message about, maybe letting go of these crazy dreams that TV filled your head with as a kid and just learning to love who you are instead of who society is maybe pushing you to try and be. And I don't know. I think that's kind of amazing. So I didn't think I was going to end up loving it. I cried through like 10 minutes of that film. It was pretty big shocker for me.
It's a good one.
It's a wonderful pick, Brad. For me, you kind of think about the topic of what your biggest shocker is, right? And for me, it's always the movie that that shouldn't work on paper. That when you read the log line for it, when you like sit down and read the description, you're just like, what? And then you start watching it and you're like, oh, this movie not only needed to be made, but it needed to be made this way. And the film I want to talk about for that is a movie called Jumbo. Jumbo is, it's a story about this woman. She works as like a night guard at an amusement park. She has a very close relationship with her mother that kind of bleeds over into like kind of a domineering type thing to a degree. She's very shy. She's had some stuff happen to her in the past, and she kind of hides herself away from the world. But one night, this woman, who again works as a night guard in an amusement park, begins to develop romantic feelings for Jumbo, which is the new attraction/ride at the park. That's right. This is a love story between a woman and an amusement park ride. It's a beautiful character story. It's a visual delight. It's strangely uplifting, especially when it showcases like the ways that we need and eventually hopefully find acceptance amongst our loved ones, even if that acceptance may not come easily to them. This movie should not work at all, but Jumbo 100% shocked me with how much it does.
Yeah, well, I got to see that one earlier in the year, and it was a surprise for me as well. But I kind of going in, you say maybe it shouldn't work on paper. Like I heard about the premise of the movie and I'm like, oh, this could be really great. Like this is, about a girl who kind of develops an attachment to an amusement park ride. And I'm like, wow, that sounds like a pretty amazing off the wall idea. So I'm cool going in, and it definitely met my expectations.
Sounds like a pretty strong pick. I didn't see it. But who hasn't had an attraction to an amusement park ride
right?
at some point in their life, right?
So it's Universal or
I've fallen in love
or Six Flags.
I've had lust for amusement park rides throughout my childhood life.
I mean, look at the fascination with mechanical bulls in straight bars, right? Like obviously people enjoy mechanical lovers. So actually some of our listeners chimed in on this one too, guys. Bill Harris from the Green Screen of Death podcast. Mm-hmm. Bill and Adrian love those guys.
Brother from another mother.
That's right. He actually called out Underwater as well, sweetheart. So as usual, you and Bill are pretty in line there. And our very own Hamstracked from the Find Your Film podcast called out Bill and Ted Face the Music as a really big shocker him as well. So, Bill, Hammy, thank you so much for sending those picks in.
Oh yeah, that was a
Appreciate
movie
ya.
this year, wasn't it?
Believe it or not,
That was
it
this
totally
year.
was. All right, well, moving down the list, our next category is biggest surprise performance. The acting performance that just came out of nowhere. Could be maybe an unknown actor that totally knocked it out of the park. Could be an actor that's been on your radar for a while, but for whatever reason just did like a beyond amazing job. Let's go to Jim. Babe, what was your best surprise performance?
Oh man, there were so many surprise performances this year. This was the one category where I had absolutely no trouble coming up with potential award winners. I had 5 or 6 really on a list, and it was tough to pick. Some categories I was struggling to come up with 1 or 2, but not for this one. I would say for me, the one performance that kind of really stands out when I think back on the year's movies is Delroy Lindow from The Five Bloods. He's an established. This is not a no-name actor. Delroy's been around for quite a while, and always have loved what he does. But in this movie, he seems to have done exactly what we are looking for in this category. Takes it to a next level. Takes the movie to the next level, and comes up with some really amazing stuff amongst a cast that's loaded. I mean, Jonathan Majors is in this one, who I love. Johnny Nguyen, Chadwick Boseman is in this film as well. He shows up. So, Delroy Lindo. If you haven't seen The Five Bloods yet, check it out. Even if just for this performance, it's a movie about a group of ex-Vietnam vets who are drawn back into Vietnam to in the memory of one of their fallen comrades. I'll just say that. And it's quite powerful. It's action, and these actors play off each other like amazingly. It's a Spike Lee film. Great stuff. Delroy Lindo into Five Bloods. If you haven't seen it, that's the performance that I think of at the top of 2020.
That's a hell of a pick too, Jim, because you're right. That's an absolutely stacked cast, but Delroy Lindow's performance is the one that sort of like stands out, which is impressive when you have that many heavy hitters in the same film.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's what did it for me when I think back on it.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Will, how about for you? What was your best surprise performance?
Yeah, so I want to preface this by saying that this isn't necessarily my favorite overall performance of the year. I'd probably say something like Riz Ahmed from Sound of Metal, and maybe even like Maria Bakalova from the Borat subsequent movie film. I think those were like the two performances that were just like the strongest with what they were accomplishing overall. But I really wanted to call out one that I did not see coming, and that was Hayley Bennett, who played the lead role in Swallow. It's an absolutely sublime performance, just absolutely took me by surprise. The story is about this woman who is trapped in a very unfulfilling relationship. You know, she's made to be like the perfect housewife to the perfect husband, as long as she kind of stays home and doesn't rock the boat, that sort of thing. But she feels like she has no control over her life, and so she begins to find one thing that she can control, and that's she starts swallowing these inanimate objects like thumbtacks and paper clips. It's just a thing that she starts doing. So Hayley Bennett's emotional state on screen is absolutely just inscrutable as she struggles with kind of her place in her life. We see little flashes of like the turmoil that she's going through while she's still trying to keep that veneer of like, I'm the perfect happy housewife up as long as she can. It's a very challenging performance. It's a very nuanced performance, and it's one that she absolutely just knocks out of the park. She's been in a few things this year. She also showed up in Hillbilly Elegy as the sister character. But Swallow was just the performance that most surprised me. So, yeah, Hayley Bennett in Swallow, hell of a performance.
Yeah, well, I did not get to catch up with that one yet. It's kind of on my list of movies to catch up with that I didn't quite get to during the year. Some of which I've hit already, but not this one. Again, this is one of those premises that, like, oh my God, this sounds kind of off the wall. You know what I mean? On paper. But yeah, I definitely will keep an eye out for her performance when I do get around to it.
I mean, for a movie called Swallow, you can't help but make our awards list.
You're surprised I haven't already watched it?
I'm a little shocked. I'm a little shocked, Jim.
Little shocked. That's my biggest shocker of the year, Jim. That's it's not Jumbo anymore.
I haven't seen a movie called Swallow.
No. Not shocker, but like shocker.
Oh,
shocker.
Yeah.
I get it.
I think that maybe, what influenced your choice there. Well, possibly, I don't know, but yeah. So, all right. So for me, best surprise performance was actually from Jim Parsons in a movie that came out last year called The Boys in the Band, which in itself is a new, more modernized. It's funny to say modernized version. It still takes place in the 60s, but take on the Broadway play with the same name. Jim Parsons, I don't know. I have a complicated relationship with Jim Parsons. I initially really liked him on The Big Bang Theory. The first couple years that show was out. Of course, he plays the character Sheldon Cooper. The longer that show went on, the more I just started to hate every single character, and I don't know. I just had a rough time. I got very Sheldoned out. It's even hard for me to watch the show Young Sheldon now, which is an entirely different actor. Whatever, but in any event, I've seen Jim Parsons in a couple other things since then. He hasn't really blown me away. Going into Boys in the Band, I was just like, all right, well, it's going to be gay Sheldon. It ended up being anything but. His performance in the film just completely blew me away. I know we said we're going to spoil some things. I don't necessarily think I'm going to spoil a lot with some of these films, but Jim Parsons just gives a tremendous performance here. Everything from soulful and sad to manic and angry to falling apart. I mean, he just has so much emotional range in this film. And it was like he came out of my TV, slapped me across the face, and said, "Hi, remember how you thought I was a joke? What do you think now?" And I'm just like, "Oh my God, Jim Parsons, you're amazing." You really like me. So that's my best surprise performance of 2020.
That's a good pick, Brad. I'm right there with you. Until this year, I've not seen Jim Parsons do anything that I liked. Fair play to anyone who does enjoy some of the stuff that he's done. It just hasn't been for me. But I did quite appreciate what he did here in Boys in the Band. And it did sort of make me, look at him a second time as a performer. And that's something that I think is hard to do once you have a few films under your belt and you've already formed an opinion on someone based off of a track record. For someone to do a course correction like that is pretty huge.
Yeah. And hopefully, that will kind of bust the paradigm that we've kind of got the actor Jim Parsons in from Sheldon, right? Or at least it did for you, Brad. And I'll be honest, I had that performance from Jim Parsons up high on my list for, I mentioned I had several of them. That was one of them. But seeing you pick him made my choice a little bit easier. It's that way he gets credit, and Delroy Lindow bubble to the top of the pack anyway. But
there you go.
Yeah, and it's no surprise. Our listeners had also sent in some strong picks for the best surprise performance. James C. from Texas was enthralled by Glenn Close's performance in Hillbilly Elegy. Now, there's a divisive performance. Some of them thought it was amazing. I thought it was really, really great. Others, not so much. But I think that's a good pick. Because obviously an established actor that we really haven't seen a lot from lately. And then bam, she's in this kind of big streaming movie and makes a big splash. So that's a great pick. Other picks included John Stevenson from Rent-A-Pal. Now there's a movie I haven't seen and a performance I haven't seen. Will, you're shaking your head. Maybe you've seen that one. I have not. And then one other, he also, from John Stevenson, mentioned Betty Gilpin from The Hunt. And yes, really a standout performance in a movie that was fine. But I think that was kind of a stand up and take notice performance of like what she was doing in that movie.
Especially after how amazing she's been in Glow. And I love this comment here from Andrew here in chat. He says Amanda Seyfried was perfect in Mank. I'll go with her. Yeah, that's possibly the best performance that she's done, to at least, maybe not to date, but at least in a while. That was a hell of a performance.
Yeah, and some, those are some great, great picks from our listeners, and we'd love to include those in the show. So, almost every week, you have a comment on a movie, please send it to us, and we'd love to talk about it during the show. But time to roll on to our next category. You guys ready for the next one? It is the movie most likely to get a rewatch. And for me, I think the film that is kind of high on my rewatch list that I haven't already watched yet, is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This is the Charlie Kaufman film that's just so like metaphorically rich and kind of has a gradual reveal throughout the movie. Kind of goes from what the fuck is happening in this movie to, oh, now it's starting to like gel and make sense. And I think this is a movie that a second viewing would reveal so much more. Like would just open up kind of the film to not be such a mystery box, but like, okay, here's what's really going on. So yes, I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Charlie Kaufman is my movie to most likely get a rewatch, so I can kind of digest what the movie's really trying to say.
I can't wait to give that one a rewatch, Jim. Like it's a very dense film, one that I think you could watch a dozen times and still find new little threads to pull at. For me, this is why I love our awards so much, because we talked a few weeks back about what our favorite films of the year are, and I could just say like, oh, it was Minari and Nomadland, and just talk so much about how much I like those specific two films. But recontextualizing the category and things that are most likely to get a rewatch makes me really think about what type of films I want to just sort of go back to the well on over and over. And for me, the hands down pick is one that I've already seen a couple of times and one that I'm kind of already thinking about watching again. And it's Sound of Metal. This is a film that I mentioned it before with one of my favorite performances of the year, Riz Ahmed. But it's a film about this drummer who begins to lose his hearing. What I love so much about this is that every aspect of this film just absolutely slaps. It's like, again, a powerhouse lead performance. Scene after scene of just dramatic tension that never comes across as melodramatic, but always comes across as very sincere and with really real stakes. When it hits hard, it hits really hard. When it pulls back and finds moments of like introspection or allowing characters to uplift one another, it relishes those moments as well. It's a pleasant experience, even though it runs you through the ringer. And all the while, it's this masterclass character arc of this character who is struggling with who he is now versus who he was expecting to be at this point in his life. Sound of Metal is one of those films that I think it's not necessarily the most complex of the films that we saw this last year. And I think certainly some of those I'll be going back to the well on, but Sound of Metal is one that I think I'll always be able to put on and just absolutely thoroughly enjoy.
Great one, Will. Great pick. Loved the sound design alone in that movie is something special. Yeah.
Oh yes, yes.
looks like you guys are not alone. Hammy in the chat says, Sound of Metal and Riz Ahmed could have easily been picked for the first 2 categories as well.
Yep.
There was a real risk as I was looking through these categories. Like, I could have probably plugged it into like 7 different slots. Like, is it best documentary? Fuck it, I'll make it work. It's that good a film.
Got to pick your spots, though. You got to pick your spots. Yeah,
that's so true. That's so true.
What you got, Brad?
For me, the movie most likely to get a rewatch is one that I've already rewatched twice since I saw it originally. This film came out right as quarantine like changed the landscape of movie watching forever forward ? This came out as one of the first films that was available, on $20 to stream at home rather than, going to a movie theater and, putting your health and others' health at risk. This movie is from Disney Pixar. And in fact, I already have a plan to rewatch this with Kevin, fan of the show, who is staying with us for a while here in Tucson. He hasn't seen it yet. So I don't think I'm going to spoil too much, but this movie is, of course, Onward. And as a D&D geek, as a Disney Pixar geek, as a emotional films that make me cry and feel things geek, this movie really hit all of the big buttons.
Hint. Cry and feel things.
Oh, yeah. So this movie was just a really big win for me on a lot of different levels. And I just find myself wanting to watch it again. I'm about to start DMing a Dungeons & Dragons campaign for the 3 of us, Jim, Kevin, and myself, and then the other couple in our quarantine. And so I'm like really jonesing to watch this movie again because there's a lot of like D&D trope elements sort of in it and weave through its plot, but not in like a bad way, like a love letter kind of way. So I'm really excited to watch this movie for the 4th time.
That's such a great pick, Brad. Like, as someone who's also a, D&D nerd, like, it scratches some of the same itches that it scratches for you. And so I think it's a very worthy pick for this slot. So when we put the call out to listeners and said, hey, what do you think? This was one of the ones where we got the most unison, like the most similar answers, because overwhelmingly the film that was most picked by all of you was Tenet, which makes sense because that's a film where it's like the time travel elements are kind of going forward and going backwards and all of these different things. And I've heard a lot of people say I'd watch it a second time just to kind of like figure out kind of what was going on or to take everything in. So all of you, predominantly, you picked Tenet.
I can definitely see why that one would have been picked.
So our next category, and this was Jim's hint from a moment ago, is our biggest tearjerker. Now, we can look at this from a couple of different perspectives. You can either pick just if it's the movie that made you cry, cool. If it's a specific scene, a specific moment, a musical note in the background, whatever it is that brought the tears to your eyes, gave you a tin cat cry, as our friend Adrian Charlie would say. That's what this category is all about. So, Jim, I'd love to hear, what was your biggest tearjerker?
Yeah, and I've looked ahead a little bit and cheated and seen all of our answers, and all of these movies made me cry. So this is going to be good. But the one that I wanted to draw attention to that I didn't expect to make me cry was a documentary called My Octopus Teacher. This one some movies will make you cry because they just have a sad story or they have a sad, really heartfelt, poignant like scripted moment, someone's best friend goes away or passes away or whatever. This movie made me cry in multiple points because it's just so first of all, because it's so beautiful, it's so beautifully filmed. It's just like the richness of this natural environment under the sea. It's actually about an octopus and this oceanographer guy who forms a relationship with this one specific octopus and learns a lot about it and its environment. And so just the magnificence of what's going on and the specialness of the connection between two different species of creature that was totally unexpected and floored me. Yeah, My Octopus Teacher is an amazing film and definitely one that brought a few tears to my eyes.
Really, really fantastic pick here, babe. Typically documentaries like don't give me emotional moments unless I don't know, it's about something really, really crazy, awful, and sad. But this one had me like ugly crying under the sea at the end. It didn't make my pick for biggest tearjerker. I think partially because I knew it was going to end up probably being in this slot for you. But man, super, super solid choice.
Mm-hmm.
Great pick, Jim. It was one of my shortlisted films, and it's the true tragedy of our awards that we kind of narrow it down to just the one. For me, I had to think about which moment just absolutely broke me this year, and there were a few, but there was one that I think stood a little above the rest, and part of it's because I know what my buttons are, right? Grief, loss, explorations of mortality. These are the things that really get to me. And so I chose, it's also a documentary, Dick Johnson is Dead, because it explores all of those things I just mentioned, just head on and so fearlessly. It's this filmmaker, Kirsten Johnson, who did Camera Person a few years back. She's following her father, who is towards the end of his life. He's got some things going on, and they decide to start playing through what his death and what his afterlife and what his funeral and all of those different things might be while he's still alive. There's this moment, because the whole movie, yes, but there's this moment where there's a fake funeral that's held, and one of Dick Johnson's really good friends, kind of close to him in age as well, starts to provide this eulogy for his still living friend. And in the process of this eulogy, he starts to get choked up, knowing probably that he's going to have to say these very words that he's saying right now for play for real. And I think that moment right there, just all of the artifice of what they were doing dropped away. All of those very real stakes came crashing into their lives and into my heart. That moment absolutely got me. It got me super good. So yeah, for me, the biggest tearjerker came from Dick Johnson is Dead.
Great one, Will. Yeah, that one scene was really like unexpected, right? Sometimes I think, the ones that hit you the hardest are the ones that you don't see coming, right? And that was definitely one.
Yeah.
Super, super sad knowing, at some point, right, that speech is going to happen. What's interesting, though, is when I was watching that film, I didn't know that he wasn't dead. Like, I just thought for sure he passed away by the end of the movie.
It's not clear, right? It's not clear. Yeah.
Right. So I wasn't sure. And so I thought it was a real funeral. And then lo and behold, we see Dick Johnson like looking through the door at the people. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? And then I realized he was still alive. And I was like super elated, but like also really sad all at the same time, thinking like, well, this is probably what's going to happen at some point. So yeah. Really, really good. To Jim's allusion in the last category, the biggest tearjerker scene for me is from Onward. So Kevin, if you're listening, tune out for a couple minutes. But there's a scene at the end of the film where, and I will spoil this one, I guess. I kind of have to set this up. The whole movie has been about bringing a dead father back for 24 hours. To talk to him, and it's on the younger kid's 16th birthday. Magic is involved, and the spell goes sideways. They only have the dad's legs and feet, and they have to get to the magic MacGuffin before the sun goes down to bring dad all the way back and be able to talk to him and hug him and like get closure and stuff. Anyway, there's this big giant battle that happens, and the 16-year-old kid gets trapped under some stuff, and It's the older brother who gets to have the moment with dad. And at first I was like, fuck that. Like, this kid has been through so much. His stupid brother, like, has made these boneheaded moves, and that's why they're in this situation. But the 16-year-old kid has the maturity to, like, let his older brother have the moment with dad instead of trying to take it for himself. And that's because, his older brother, like, knew his dad better. He was older when his dad was alive, and that was just super poignant for me. Like, not to get too crazy or maudlin, but like, I've been in situations where someone is, on their deathbed, and you're trying to get everybody through, as much as you can so that everyone can get that moment, right, and get that closure before that person passes on. In this case, obviously, it's, a magic spell, and that's not a real thing, maybe, question mark, I don't know. But not only, was it emotionally poignant, it was just, I don't know, it resonated well with me. And the fact that the older brother comes back and he's like, see, I'm getting choked up thinking about it. The fact that the older brother comes back and he's like, I told dad all about you and what you've been doing. And, dad said he's proud of you and da-da-da-da. I was just like, oh my God, my heart. It was awesome. So
Pixar does it again.
They do. In fact, Hammy in the chats, looks like I'm not alone in this love. He says that scene in Oddworld is so well done. You can't hear a word they're saying, but exactly the conversation, what happens. Yeah, Hammy, absolutely. Again, like, it's one of those things where you do not have to telegraph every single thing, show every single thing, right? To get that emotional gut punch. So way to go, Disney, Pixar. Appreciate you. We also had some thoughts sent in from some of our other listeners. Some of the films that they called out in terms of their biggest tearjerkers. The scene from Onward, again, made that list. The bonding scene in My Octopus Teacher. God, that's so powerful. If you haven't seen that yet, go do it. And then what we'll simply call the red flash scene in Spontaneous. Man, some really great picks, listeners. Thank you so much for sending those in. All right. Well, our next category is actually one of my favorite categories that we do in our superlatives, our annual awards. This is our best hell yeah scene. A scene from a movie or TV show or game that's like a movie or a TV show, whatever that may be, that just makes you sit up in your chair and go, hell yeah! So let's go to Jim. Babe, what was your best hell yeah scene from 2020?
So this one was one of the tougher ones I had. I don't know if these scenes just don't resonate a lot with me, or there just weren't a lot of like triumph. I associate the hell yeah scene with like a triumphant like moment in a film, and I kind of struggled a little bit to come up with one that really made an impact on me this year. But I did settle on one from a TV series called The Queen's Gambit, which is about fictional chess prodigy Beth Harmon. And the hell yeah moment comes, of course, at the end of her triumph when she no, sorry, not at the end. This is one I picked a different one from this movie. There were two hell yeah scenes. One was when her old friend Jolene shows up, reappears at the perfect moment in the film to inject some spark back into Beth and their friendship. So it was kind of like a surprise reveal, like knock on the door thing. Boop, there's Jolene, like, yeah, there's Jolene's back. That was awesome.
That movie or show, that series is just absolutely filled with those amazing moments. And I think that's part of why we were so drawn to it, that we did a full damn episode about it, was that it kept giving us those little like, yeah moments that kind of ramp up through it. So it's a hell of a pick. I would not begrudge anyone picking that or any of the scenes from that film as their pick. For me, this was a tough one for me too, mainly because when I think about the hell yeah moments, I tend to think about like the first thing that comes to mind is like action sequences, right? You know, like the cool stunt, like the, you know, like the hero taking out the villain. And there were definitely some badass ones there. I came very close to choosing the kind of like the final kind of explosive ending to Birds of Prey. We'll just call it that. But the more I thought about this category, there was another film that really struck me here. So there's this new film by Thomas Vinterberg starring Mads Mikkelsen called Another Round. And it's about this group of high school teachers who all, based on some just sort of like discomfort in their lives and where they're at, they all make this pledge to one another to maintain this constant level of like kind of low level intoxication, not fall over drunk, but just enough drunk at all times in their lives. It creates a scenario that is a little tragic, obviously, because of like the, you know, the obvious ties to like alcoholism and such, but also hilarious because what they take on as something that they think is going to be just sort of fun and easy to do becomes, you know, starts to get out from control of them. But it's a great movie. But there's this scene at the end where everything's come to a head and everything's resolved, and there are these students who have graduated and they're able to drink now, and they're on this like, you know, kind of like by the water, and Mads Mikkelsen goes out there and you don't know exactly what he's going to do at first based on everything that's happened, and then he starts dancing. He grabs some alcohol and he just starts twirling around the scene and drinking and kind of dancing with them and celebrating, and it is an amazing scene. Like it brings it's easily adds like a star to the whole, like the movie star rating. It brings all of the themes and all of the character moments to this like wonderful little like epilogue to this film. So yeah, my hell yeah moment, give me Mads dancing and drinking across the set of any movie you want to put him in. I absolutely love this moment.
Sounds like you ain't Mads about it.
I ain't Mads.
Not at all.
All right. Well, we've got a couple of listener picks in the chat as we've been talking. Mary Meadows says almost all of Birds of Prey was hell yeah. Mary absolutely could see that. Andrew Martin says the mic drop at the end of the 40-year-old version, not Virgin, different movie, was a great hell yeah moment as well. So Mary, Andrew, thank you so much for sending us your picks. For mine, Jim, it's interesting that you brought up the Queen's Gambit because my hell yeah moment also comes from the Queen's Gambit, although a different scene than the one you brought up. I look at this series as a movie in 7 parts. That's basically what it feels like to me. So I know it's TV, but like technically, I don't know. I'm going to count it like a movie. And I will spoil this one a little bit. At the end of the film, Beth Harmon has her big showdown with Viktor Borgov in Russia. It is the chess match of the century. Yeah, it's kind of telegraphed. Like the show has to have a little bit of a happy ending, but she kicks his ass in that chess match, and it's kind of awesome to see her triumph. Before, you know, at her other games, she needed booze and pills to like enter this headspace where she could see the games play out on the ceiling, and then that's how she'd figure out how to win. This time she was able to do it without the booze, without the drugs, all her. And, you know, with a little help from some emotional support from her friend Jolene, Jim, which you mentioned, a sure hell yeah moment, so co-signed there. But also the fellas back home who called to wish her luck and talk to her before the game. So super, super great moment in that. I sat up. I was ecstatic. I was so happy to see it. We watched the series a second time. I knew it was coming, but I still hell yeah'd in my head. So there you go.
Yeah, and having those friends around her kind of added to the hell yeah-ness of that scene, because they also had their hell yeah moment right there on the screen, which kind of helped put it over the top.
Mm-hmm. We've got another comment from Hammy, and then Jim, I know you've got some other listener comments I think you're going to go through. But Hammy says, I Care a Lot had a bunch of hell yeah moments, which immediately was debased once I remembered, oh yeah, they're a garbage human. I shouldn't be excited. Thankfully, it came out in 2021.
It might make next year's list.
Yeah, next year.
Maybe. Question
on
mark.
the shelf for next year. Yeah, as you mentioned, Brad, there were some other notable hell yeah scenes that our listeners called out. The showdown between Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson in The Devil All the Time, which was actually a movie I considered for the next category, which we'll talk about in a little while, that I really, really liked. But I totally get that. And then the moment when Bobby Seale, one of the defendants in the trial of the Chicago 7, is let go. That's a triumphant moment in the movie. There were a few courtroom scenes in there we could say were kind of hell yeah moments. And the last 2 minutes of Promising Young Woman, which was, wow, an insane movie. I don't remember if that was last year or this year, or when I saw it. Maybe that's confusing things. But yes, I know what you're talking about without spoiling anybody on the ending. It was definitely a hell yeah kind of payback moment that we didn't know we were going to get until those last 2 minutes. So good on you for calling that one out.
You know, those last 2 minutes. So Promising Young Woman was the last movie that I saw in a theater before lockdown happened. So that was the last thing that I've seen in theater. So those last 2 minutes were the last 2 minutes that I've spent in a theater. So I mean, good to go out on a hell yeah moment, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, our also in our chat right now, live chat, James Castaneda has a comment back to the trial of the Chicago 7 when Michael Keaton takes the stand. One of those courtroom hell yeah moments when he takes the stand and kind of speaks some truth, and we're like, yeah, you go. And so yeah, that was a great one, James. Thank you for that one.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to our next category, which is most underrated movie. Why aren't people talking about this movie? With all the talk that's been happening this year on Twitter and, not the movie theaters because we're not there, but on Twitter and social media, kind of the most underrated movie. And I kind of had to think about this one a lot too. And babe, this was one I know we saw because we saw it together. This one's called Uncle Frank. I believe it's a movie on Netflix. This has some great performances by Vision himself, Paul Bettany, Sophia Lillis, a pretty fun performance by an actor who I wasn't that familiar with, Peter McDessie, all against kind of a poignant story showing generational damage that homophobia and shame can cause in lives. And that's what this movie's about. It's LGBT themed. I thought all the performances were great. I thought the theme was really strong and powerful. Good script, good writing, some amazing, just right up front, there's a scene between Paul Bettany and Sophia Lillis that I found just roped me right in. And then yet nobody talked about this movie really. So that's getting my most underrated movie of the year award.
Not only do I love that you picked it because, it's a good film, but I love that we get some LGBTQ representation on our list. And that's not the first one. I know we mentioned Boys in the Band earlier, but I think I always like to highlight and celebrate those moments just because those moments belong on film, and I'm glad that they are in front of eyes, as many eyes as can be seen. Mm-hmm. For me, so it actually came up earlier. It was mentioned in the tearjerker section. Spontaneous. It made it on my end of year list, and with very, 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 very good reason. This is a darkly funny and tragic film that follows the lives of this graduating class of high school students, and they're all afflicted with this like terrible malady. They spontaneously burst into just this spray of blood, dying instantly. It sucks, and these kids don't know when they're going to die, and they begin to feel very hopeless about the futures. But while they're experiencing all of this, two of the students, Catherine Langford, who is in the 13 Reasons Why series, and Charlie Plummer, who we're fans of from Lean on Pete, they decide to start a relationship anyways. This is such a smartly written film. It's so well performed. It touches on how it feels to be young and to have the weight of the future bearing down on your soul, and all of that would make it a great movie in and of itself. But also, it felt like it really resonated with the year for me. I think that as we went through, COVID, and just there was so much uncertainty about what the future was going to hold, about what our own health was going to hold. Like, it was a terrifying moment. And this movie feels like it was, released at the perfect time for all of that. It was the second biggest tearjerker of the year for me. It has the best monologue of the year for me. Just everything about this movie is perfect. So I wish more people had seen this. It goes over gangbusters with like a young adult audience, with genre fans, people that love movies. It's such a great movie. Everyone should be like talking about Spontaneous in like every single conversation.
Yeah, great pick, Will. And you're definitely right about it having a special kind of resonance with what's been going on this year. The movie's theme being, you never know what can be taken away from you, like in a moment's notice. So just really resonant. Great pick.
Should I stop telling people they should be more spontaneous as a result?
It depends. Are you wearing red?
I have red on my shirt.
Oh,
Does that count?
It depends on how close you're sitting. Yeah, having red on your shirt totally counts.
What do you got, babe?
Oh gosh! All right. So for me, the film that I feel like was the most underrated, at least in sort of my friend circles. I mean, I don't really follow film Twitter because I don't like to be like influenced by the people's opinions before I see a film. So I don't know. I'm not as plugged into the movie verse as you folks are. But, on Facebook and other social media that I am on, I connected with friends, like nobody was really talking about this film. And I saw it and I was like, oh my God, this movie is fan-fucking-tastic. Why aren't people talking about it? Will, I know you didn't like this one that much, and that is completely okay. But this movie was Hillbilly Elegy, which also came up in another category earlier from our listeners. Starring, of course, Glenn Close, who gives an amazing performance as Mama. Amy Adams, who she's on such a hot streak, like from Sharp Objects to this film. Maybe not so much Lois in the DC movies, but she's great. And then Gabriel Basso, of course, playing J.D. Vance, the character that sort of goes through the main story. Growing up in the Midwest and in the South, this movie resonates a lot for me. Having members of my family who went through alcohol and drug abuse and seeing how that can fracture the family, like all of that stuff just really resonated with me personally. So I loved this movie so much. And I tried to put it out there on Facebook. I was like, folks, Hillbilly Elegy, like, see this movie. And everyone was like, no, it has hillbilly in the title, and I don't want to watch movies about hillbillies.
Right.
So yeah. So it has a problem in its title, I think, if it's keeping people from seeing it, maybe. I don't know. It's just unfortunate.
Has hillbilly in the title, and I don't think there's any superheroes in it or costumes. You know what I mean? Like shiny costumes, that is. So, yeah, I think that's two strikes against it right there. And there's probably others. For those of us who read film Twitter, I know there are others that I've read about. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with, but it is what it is. And you're right, babe. I think it was definitely an underrated movie this year for reasons.
We've asked the question, why aren't people talking about these films? And the thing is, our listeners are. So we went back to our contributors and we said, okay, what were some of the things that blew you away that just aren't on anyone's radars? And a few of the different picks that we got, Eric C., he said Pieces of a Woman. Hamstracked says Uncle Peckerhead. And Bill Harris says Spontaneous. And here in chat, Andrew Martin says One Night in Miami for underrated and under talked about. Uncle Frank was very good, by the way. And I do want to echo all of those. I mean, of course, the Spontaneous one, because I said it too. But like One Night in Miami, Andrew, is such a good pick. And I'm hoping that maybe the people that talk about it are the best director nominees for the Oscars. I'm hoping that maybe Regina King kind of is able to get in there and walk away with a statue. I think that maybe it's on the table, hopefully. Hell of a good pick. The next category is gonna be a weird one. And I say that because this has been a celebration, a love fest, us standing on the mountaintop and proclaiming to the gods these movies are great. But with every bit of sweet, you need just at least a little bit of sour. So we are now going to talk about the worst movie of 2020. Jim?
Yes.
Take it away.
Yes. For me, sadly, this was another easy category for me to come up with several films to choose from. So I settled on one that I know we reviewed on the show. And I think we all pretty much did not like it. That's not the reason why I picked it, but I had a strong dislike for it right from the get-go, and that's Artemis Fowl. That's one of those ones I will not be going back for a rewatch ever. Even if there is a Snyder cut, I will not be going back to watch that. Just kind of fantasy adventure done really horribly. It's just, I don't know if the book that's based on or the property that's based on is any good, but the movie is just a complete disaster in every way. That's all I can say. I don't know what else to say other than that's my worst movie of the year. I'm not going to dig on it anymore. We did for about an hour on our review show of it, so we'll just leave it at that for me.
Yeah, that's a great pick, Jim. A great
pick. Probably my best pick is my worst movie. Yeah.
I'll just say it was probably going to be my pick. But then I was sure at least one of you was going to pick it as well. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna pick something else. So, babe, I'm really glad. Glad is such a weird word to say, but I'm not surprised to see that I made your list for worst movie.
I had I had narrowed mine down to 3, and while I didn't pick that one, that was one of my 3. This category is so weird. Like, I think this category is important, but it's also one that I don't like to do too much of a jig on the grave of, so to speak, just because I don't like to dunk on movies a lot myself. Again, even though there's merit to it. The other thing, the big disclaimer that I've got here is I've probably seen a lot of bad movies. I do screening for some festivals, and you get a lot of submissions from filmmakers who are, it's their first film and they're self-financed and they're trying to figure things out. I didn't look at those. I did not look at those. I thought I only want something that had like a major release, that had some money behind it, that I don't want to punch down. So the movie that climbed to the top or the bottom of that list is a movie called Guns Akimbo. Guns Akimbo is bad for a lot of reasons. It's a poorly written film about Daniel Radcliffe basically gets taken captive and has guns strapped to his hands and has to fight his way out of a kind of a weird I don't want to go too far into it here, but it sucks. Daniel Radcliffe is better than this movie, but the thing that really pushed it over the top for me, I probably could have picked any of the three movies that I could have picked any of the three movies in my bottom, but this one also had a filmmaker who ended up doing some pretty shitty things during the marketing of all of this film, including harassing people on Twitter of color who because of some things that happened. And it was very gross to sit through that entire situation. The film is incel garbage, and I don't think anyone should watch it if they can avoid it. Guns Akimbo, skip that shit.
Poor Daniel Radcliffe. He has to get tagged with doing this movie. I didn't see this one, Will. It will not, probably not something I'll circle back to, but I'll take your word for it. Just the title alone makes me a little leery of it.
Hey, Will, yeah. I'm gonna try and do you a favor. Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
I have the Elder Wand. I fished it out of the river, and I removed all the bad J.K. Rowling mojo from it. Okay. I'm going to attempt to obliviate Guns Akimbo from your brain so you forget. You ready?
Okay.
Obliviate!
The worst movie was Artemis Fowl.
Hey!
It worked.
All right.
Yeah, we agree. What do you got, Brad?
Totally.
Worst movie for you of the year. I can't wait to hear this.
Okay. Well, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, Artemis Fowl was on my short list. It came down to that movie and another one for me. And Jim, since you picked it, it made it really easy for me to go with my other number 2 choice. This may be controversial to say, but I'm just going to be integrous. Is that a word? I have no idea. I'm going to demonstrate integrity and just say that Wonder Woman 1984 was my worst movie of 2020. A couple different reasons. One, the first Wonder Woman movie was such a masterpiece in my eyes. Patty Jenkins just did an amazing job with that film. As good as it was, I also think it's problematic because anytime you have a sequel, except in very rare instances, it's really hard to top the first film. You have all these expectations, all this sort of baggage that you bring with you into that movie. So I will just say up front, that could be part of it. But also, too, just in terms of the plot of this movie, the choices that characters make, Wonder Woman being totally okay, basically raping somebody because her boyfriend's soul is in their body. It's just problematic on so many different levels for me. There were some cool things that happened in it, but just no. Absolutely no. And Andrew, thank you so much for making me not feel alone. Andrew says, thank you in giant capital letters. Wonder Woman 84 was the worst of the year, especially in comparison to the first. So, Andrew, I feel like you and I maybe seeing a little eye to eye here. I'm all for it. But Wonder Woman 84.
It was in my consideration list. It's not a good film. The only thing that sort of kept it from the very, very, very bottom of my list is that I don't know. I found myself a couple of times rooting for the movie to be better, and I think maybe that's just because of Patty Jenkins. I want to believe in her, especially after what she's done. So, but I have no problems with anyone picking this one because it was on my short list. It's not a good movie.
Yeah, I think this movie, for me, I don't know if it was on my short list for the worst movie of the year. I did not like the movie. Like you said, compared to the first movie, it's a pale comparison. There's not much in this movie to recommend. There are a couple of brief moments, I think, that I really did like in this movie. I think the saddest thing is kind of the missed potential that this movie had. Wonder Woman in the 80s, think of all the great, we were all thinking that, right? Going in, how much potential how great this movie could be. And it didn't utilize any of that. It had its own ideas. And unfortunately those ideas I thought were kind of bad. So yeah, I can totally see where you get that from. Wow. So shall we just move on?
Well, real quick, Hammy in the chat says, Wonder Woman 84 was bad and harmful since there's kids watching it and potentially learning terrible lessons.
Don't disagree with that at all.
No,
Yep.
I don't disagree
Yep.
with that at all.
All
Kids,
right.
don't take any lessons from anything you watch. That's Wonder Woman 84 anywhere and this show.
There you go. All right. Well, let's move on to our next category here. Wow, we're an hour and 10 minutes in already. We still have a few categories left. But let's go to best soundtrack or score. I think the name of that one is pretty self-evident. But I mean, a soundtrack or a musical score that just really reaches out and grabs you for whatever that reason may be. Jim, what was your pick in this category?
I won't go into it too much here, other than to say the way I evaluate soundtracks is how they elevate or amplify the film, the visuals of the film and the pace of the film and the plot of the film. That's the purpose of a soundtrack. And the one that does that the best is the one I'm going to notice the best. And if it catches me, like if a soundtrack kind of sinks into the background of a movie and isn't noticeable, then I'm not going to notice it. But when two things happen, when it elevates the movie and when it kind of makes you take notice, then that's a great soundtrack to me. There were two of those this year, tie for me: Wolf Walkers and Driveways. It would have been Nomadland score if I had seen that in 2020. So I'm going to have to wait till next year to see if anything topples that. But yeah, Wolf Walkers, I thought was an amazing score because I really got into it. And then Driveways, I've been listening to it as kind of a relaxation mode because it is a gentle piano, babe, think sleep music kind of stuff. But it definitely lent to the film in a special way. So those two.
Yeah, both are great. The Bruno Coules did the Wolfwalkers soundtrack, basing the songs off of some of like the Irish folklore style stuff, the Celtic stuff, with some of the pop sensibilities of like Aurora kind of like woven in there. It's super good. And then your other one is great because it mirrors one that I picked. So for me, I picked Jay Wadley had a hell of a year. He did two scores this year for I'm Thinking of Ending Things and Driveways. So instead of picking one of those movies, I picked Jay Wadley for his body of work this year. And I almost chose Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. They did Soul and Mank and Watchmen this year. And ask me again tomorrow, I may change my mind. They're probably going to win an Oscar. They just won a Golden Globe and they'll deserve it. But today I'm going with Jay Wadley. The Driveways score it combines a lot of very like tender, evocative music that's tinged with like melancholy, and it creates this very specific and particular like moment in like space and time. It's a very easy album to like vibe out to, and it's one that it pairs very beautifully with just the story about friendship that forms between this young boy and the elderly neighbor. So it's a perfect blend of like sounds good by itself and also works so well with the movie. And when he did the score for I'm Thinking of Ending Things, he got to create something that maybe had a few more flair moments to it. It's subtly magical and otherworldly. There's a hint of sort of like vintage music that's sort of like woven in there as well, and it culminates in this killer track for the Dream Ballet sequence, which kind of forms like the film's climax. For me, he got a chance. Jay Wadley got a chance to really stunt this year. He got to make something beautiful, and he got to make something a little more bold, and both of them work so well. So either of those scores absolutely slaps.
I didn't realize that it was the same composer. So when I rewatch I'm Thinking of Ending Things, I will take notice of that.
Yep.
Somebody is muted.
Oh no, Fred.
No, we lost Fred. Lost our captain. My captain went quiet. Can see you fine. Cannot hear you. No. Okay. If it's okay, I'll announce Brad's pick for best soundtrack or score. His was the Queen's Gambit, which he found haunting, beautiful, and also anxiety-inducing in some of those more tense moments, ethereal and painful to the soul at times. And this is one that I think fit in well and kind of elevated that material. Already a good film, I think, elevated by the soundtrack.
I think that's a really good pick, Brad, because one, we know how much that series like meant to you, but it was one where the soundtrack was on full display kind of throughout, like, and it did a lot of the heavy lifting. It's an absolutely great pick, and we had some pretty great picks from some of our listeners as well. They picked scores like the Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, the score from Malcolm and Marie, and the score from The Vast of Night. All very, very good picks. And Hamstrack here in the chat says Leslie Odom Jr. should get special consideration for nailing those Sam Cooke songs. And of course, that is in reference again to One Night in Miami. That is an incredible pick. And yeah, Leslie Odom Jr., if he wasn't on your radar before, and he was on a lot of people's radar after Hamilton, I think this should absolutely put him on your radar.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I want to catch up with to hear some of those Sam Cooke songs for sure. And I don't know if we have Brad back yet, but maybe we should be jumping to the next category.
I think so. So we talk a lot about narrative films here on the Movie Bears podcast. It's, we tend to like watch and review things that we know an audience is going to watch, which means we don't tend to do a lot of coverage of documentaries, just, kind of the way it works when you're covering media. But we made a category just for our favorite documentaries because we don't always give those enough love. And now's our chance. So Jim, what's your favorite doc?
Well, we've mentioned this one before, and it's probably no secret that I'm going to mention it here because this is a category where normally I would talk about this movie, but it's My Octopus Teacher again. And to be honest, this would have been probably also been my biggest shocker based on just the impact of the movie, of watching this movie, kind of offset by the title, right? The title, My Octopus Teacher, right? I'm telling people like, hey, go watch the Octopus Teacher's documentary. It's great. They're like, oh shit, freaking octopus movie. This is Jacques Cousteau. I've seen this 100 times. But it's actually more than that. And that's what elevates this movie to probably definitely my favorite documentary of the year. And this was a great year for documentaries, by the way. So many great ones in here. And, for this movie to climb to the top tells you kind of how special it was, at least to me. But Will, what do you got?
First of all, that's a hell of a pick. When I was doing my short list, I was thinking, okay, My Octopus Teacher, definitely in consideration. So is Dick Johnson is Dead. I mentioned that earlier. But the documentary that I think most worked for me, because it both moved me and it angered me, was this documentary called Time. It's this documentary. It follows the story of this woman named Fox Rich. She is a woman whose husband was incarcerated, put away for 60 years. He's given a 60-year sentence back when they have some little boys back when they were like really little. Now, some time has passed. The boys have moved on to college, and her husband is still in jail. So Fox has become an advocate for her husband's reliefs. Time features a lot of home footage collected by Fox over the different years as she documents what her life is like with her husband absent, along with some contemporary footage as well. And the movie showcases just how perilous and how wrought and how unfair at times the entire prison system can be, the entire prison industrial complex, as it were, and just how much reform is needed, and how even people that made mistakes in the past but have corrected things and have done what they're supposed to just aren't given the same opportunities and chances as perhaps they should. Plus, this documentary works so well because we don't really see a ton of Rob. That's the husband. We don't see a ton of him in this movie, like directly on frame, like talking or whatever, but we see him in footage and we see him in photographs and we see him in things along those lines. And I think it makes it all the more poignant because the absence of Rob is felt in every frame of this film. It creates this longing and this loss that permeates every frame, and we understand just how sad this life has been for this family without this one key member of it. So the documentary is called Time, and I strongly encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, well, that's another one that's on the list that I just hadn't caught up with last year. So still on my watch list for 2021. So we'll see. Maybe it'll show up on somewhere on my list next year. And Brad, who is still attempting to get on, his pick for favorite documentary was also My Octopus Teacher. I know we didn't get to see this together, but I know Brad watched it after I did, and I believe the impact on him was just as strong as it was on me. I watch a ton of documentaries, and it was good to see him kind of be drawn to this one and check it out and also really enjoy it too. So that made me feel good. Let me see. Let's talk about some documentaries that got called out by our listeners also. The Last Dance on Netflix. That's one I'm not fully that aware of. The Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? We saw this one right flat at the end of the year last year. I think it might have actually even been in 2021. I'm not exactly sure, but that was a great one. Of course, My Octopus Teacher, which we mentioned, and Dick Johnson is Dead, which is a documentary. And again, I said this was a great year for documentaries. We've talked about that movie a couple of times already, and that speaks to the quality of documentaries this year. So yeah, some great picks from our listeners. So thank you.
All right. So that's 9 categories. We've got one more, and this is one more where, we're going to turn up the heat just a little bit, right? We're going to turn up the heat. This is our hottest on-screen moment, whether it be an actor that caught your eye or a scene that got you a little bit hot under the collar. Jim, I'm actually dying to know what was your hottest on-screen moment?
This was a tough year for that. I just didn't, going back through my list of movies that I watched this year, I didn't recall, nothing like popped to the top of my head in terms of like, oh my God, that's a super sexy scene. At least that I could think of. And maybe it's what's going on this year that kind of is squelching some of my sensitivity to that stuff. But I would say for me, then it kind of fell back on, okay, who do I think is sexy or who do I think is hot? And for me, it's actor. Anytime that actor Paul Walter Hauser is kind of on screen. And Paul Walter Hauser is the actor who starred as Richard Jewell. In Richard Jewell, he was in The Five Bloods. He's had an amazing year. He's also in the new series Cobra Kai, which is getting a ton of great press, and I think it's a series that's really beloved. So yeah, Paul Walter Hauser. I mean, we haven't got a shirtless scene yet, but we can hope.
Whew. I should have. If I had really thought about it, I could have been like, "What's Jim gonna pick?" I probably could have landed on this if I tried to prognosticate enough. So it's not a bad thing to be on Brad, Jim.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, this was actually a tough category for me too. I looked at a lot of the films that I saw this year, and I've definitely seen some that were like there was like some sexiness built in. Some of those films were ones that played at festivals that don't have distribution yet, so they're probably next year picks or what have you. So I turned towards TV for this one, and I know that's only a little bit of a cheat because we're talking Queen's Gambit too. But
Yeah, that's right.
but I went with
Legal.
something else. I chose Lovecraft Country, specifically some scenes between Tick Freeman, who's played by Jonathan Majors, and Letitia Lewis, who's played by Journey Smollett. You might ask, well, why? Why did you choose this? What was it about their love scenes? What was it about this? And I'll tell you, it's because Jonathan Majors is a snack and a half, and I am shallow. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all the justification I've got. So I picked Lovecraft Country. Sorry about it.
Will, there's nothing wrong with being shallow or on brand or whatever we want to call it, because we're both in that space right now. Me with Paul Walter Hauser and you with Lovecraft Country. And yes, Jonathan Majors is a force. I mean, that dude is a sexy dude, no matter what your persuasion. And his talent is also sexy to me. I'm just saying. Yeah. Brad's category.
Hold on.
Wait,
Can you hear me?
My God, we got
yes,
Brad.
we can. We have Brad.
I'm back.
It's almost like Brad's mic was just like, well, we can't have him not say this one.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Thanks, Windows, and your sound sourcing issues. So hand me in the chat. Actually, one second. There we go. You guys still hear me? Cool. Hammy in the chat says, gonna need to hear Brad give his pick on this one. I'll wait 5 hours if I need to. Hammy, thankfully, the wait isn't that long, but I'll tell you what I picked. So I struggle with whether or not to say this on the show, but you know what? I'm just gonna say it. I have more than a passing interest in BDSM. Who doesn't?
What?
I know, right? If you're close to me, you probably know that. So I've, for a while now, been checking out movies that, are related to BDSM, TV shows that are related, just to kind of, I don't know, expand my knowledge a little bit, see what society thinks BDSM kind of is versus like what it actually is. We mentioned a few weeks ago on the show, we watched 50 Shades of Grey just for fun, and it broke our TV. But I watched a film, I don't know, a couple months back before 50 Shades called 365 Days. It's actually on Netflix right now. You can go out and watch it if you want. It's sort of like the Polish version of 50 Shades of Grey. And it is all in English. So it's not like a subtitled film. But the lead in that movie, Michelle Morone, is fucking hot muscle bear. And like, I have a wide range of types. Muscle bear is not the be all end all thing. In fact, it's, probably not where my sweet spot lies, but he's a pretty hot guy. And there's some really hot scenes of him getting, and consent is a thing in all of these different scenes, but him just being very like rough, aggressive, and like forceful with willing participants / partners. It's not a gay BDSM movie. I mean, it is male on female, but it's fucking hot. There's like a 5-minute sequence of him and his love interest like just fucking all over a boat out in the middle of the ocean. And it's not often that I get turned on watching straight people do things, but this totally was a super hot scene for me. Even if you just put the movie on and skip to like the last third of the movie where that scene takes place to see what I'm talking about, it's pretty hot. Also, we see some peen, which is kind of interesting. Watching 50 Shades of Grey, I think we saw like a split second of Shaft in that film. This shows more than that.
You damn right.
Damn right.
So yeah, this is super, super hot scene, but I don't think this is a movie that I've certainly heard anyone else talk about. It did come out in 2020. I don't know if you guys heard about it at all, but there you go. There's my pick, Hammy. I mean, if that sounds at all interesting to you can check it out. But that was what I had.
Never even heard of this one.
Brad, I'm going to float again the idea that I think you should check out Dogs Don't Wear Pants if you get a chance. It's another BDSM power dynamic film. It was like in my top 10 from this last year. Like
I went and saw that.
Yeah. So I knowing kind of like that's the kind of the film hole that you're going down right now. Just put a little star next to that one. I think you'll like it.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I took note of that in that show a couple weeks ago. Currently going through the second season of Bonding, also on Netflix. So it's on my list to get to as soon as I'm done with Bonding. But I appreciate the recommendation. Well,
Brad, can you please share Hamstrack's comment on screen?
Ba-da-da-da.
Seeing a little dick neck never hurt no one. Truer words never spoken.
Hammy, I love and adore you so much, and you're so absolutely right.
So in the Terran alternate universe, is there a version of this podcast that only reviews like movies with BDSM in them, and like we're all dressed in like leather and bondage gear?
I would
the Movie Dom podcast.
I would watch and be part of that show in a heartbeat. I'm just saying. So.
What was it, Will? What'd you call it?
The Movie Dom podcast.
Movie Dom.
No. Sorry. I'm dumb. It's the Movie Bear Domcast.
There you go. That could work too.
BDSM.
It would be like bears doing sadism movies. BDSM. Anyway. All right, Jim, I think we had some listener comments for this one.
Sure. Besides Hammies, we have Eric gave us the perfect answer to the question about hottest screen moment. He says, the Queen's Gambit. Who knew chess could be so arousing? Right? I mean, there's a lot of phallic symbolism going on in chess for sure. So there is that element.
It's a good pick.
Definitely.
Thanks, Eric.
Solid. All right. Well, that wraps us up for our awards main portion of the show. But we sort of have a lightning round, and we won't spend a lot of time on these. But it felt apropos to talk about some other things. So we have some additional categories here: favorite books, favorite TV shows, favorite song, favorite album, favorite video game, favorite pop culture moment. So, gentlemen, we'll just go through these very, very quickly. Jim, did you have a favorite book?
Do you want me to just run through all of my favorites in every category?
Let's just do them one at a time.
All right, fine. Yeah, my favorite book is, I don't read a lot of books right now. The favorite one I'm reading now is Great American Short Stories. It's an anthology. Great American Short Stories 2020. I try to get one every year because I love the short story form. I like there's a lot of great, just great stories and great characters that come out of short stories. Many movies that we watch are based on short stories. So it's kind of the medium that I like to dwell in when reading, because they're digestible and easy, and it doesn't seem like a huge investment. So yeah, Great American Short Stories 2020.
All right, excellent. Thanks so much, Will. How about you?
I went with Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis. It's a sci-fi novel about this girl who kind of runs afoul of but I guess befriends an alien that's sort of involved in kind of the government, Roswell, Area 51 type stuff. Super good book, Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis. Really good.
All right, excellent. And my favorite book of 2020 is A Promised Land by President Barack Obama. All about his time in office, but also, his childhood and all the things that went into the stew that made him the man that he is. It's a really long book, 794 pages. It's a lot to read, but definitely a great one for sure. Let's move on down to favorite TV show. Jim, what do you got?
All right, I'm going to go with something, since we've already called Queen's Gambit really a movie in 7 parts. I'm going to go with a TV show that is really like a TV show, and that is Cobra Kai. So much fun this year watching Cobra Kai. This is a kind of a follow-up series to a very popular movie series that is just done right. I just think this one's a lot of fun. They've developed some great characters out of the original property, and it's a lot of fun to watch, and it has Paul Walter Hauser. So there you go.
I came super close to picking Cobra Kai. I came super close to picking Ted Lasso, but
Okay, yeah.
I went with Lovecraft Country. I mentioned it before, but just I love the way that it took like these Lovecraftian themes, but sort of like reinterpreted and reclaimed the message for an audience that was originally precluded from Lovecraft because he's a fucking racist. So Lovecraft Country is super good, and it pushed all my buttons.
All right,
Awesome,
excellent. I was going to go with Queen's Gambit, but Jim, you just reminded me that I said it was a movie in 7 parts earlier, so I'm gonna pick a different one, and I'm gonna go with Better Call Saul. That show has been knocking it out of the park season after season after season. Because of COVID, who the fuck knows when we're gonna get the next season of Better Call Saul? But we were just in Albuquerque over the weekend. We stayed in our quarantine bubble, but we went there to clear out an old storage unit I had. That's a whole nother story. But it was so crazy. Like, we got takeout from the Doghouse, which is a chili dog place.
Landmark
Albuquerque place that is predominantly featured in several episodes of Better Call Saul. And it was just ethereal, surreal to like be at the Doghouse, a place I'd been to many times when I lived in Albuquerque, again after having watched Breaking Bad and now Better Call Saul. So that show is very much on my mind, even though it's been over a year, I think, since we had any new episodes of the show. It still counts in 2020. So there you go. Mm-hmm. Favorite TV show. Let's move on to favorite song. Jim, I see this one's blank for you.
Yeah, I just don't have one.
It doesn't have to be like a brand new song. What is there? Maybe a song you've listened to a lot in 2020? You just keep going back to?
I don't want to. No, I'm blank, so I'm going to let Will have the stage.
Okay. Well, for me, I went with Phoebe Bridgers' Kyoto, or alternately, also Phoebe Bridgers' I Know the End. Her album kind of came out of nowhere this year and just struck me perfectly. But Kyoto is especially interesting to me because the music video for it, she was literally supposed to go on travel to Kyoto to shoot the video, and then the pandemic happened. So she shot the whole thing just sort of like on a green screen, like in a like her house. Like it's just like it's intentionally cheap because the pandemic made it. But anyway, Kyoto by Phoebe Bridgers is so good. Listen to it so many times.
All right, excellent. Mary has a pick in this category: "Wet Ass Pussy" by Cardi B.
I thought that was an Italian slur, actually.
Oh,
I thought she was calling me names. Which is more problematic. I have no idea.
Wet Ass Pussy is good, and so is while we're talking Megan Thee Stallion, like she also had Savage this last year. So that was she had a damn good year.
Indeed. We've got some other thoughts from listeners. Andrew Martin says, "Walking in the Snow" by Run the Jewels. And then James, hey James, didn't get to say hi to you earlier. Good to see you with us as well. James says, oops, comments are moving around. Cardi B's Coronavirus. So Cardi B is like cleaning up in this category on the Movie Bears podcast. For me, my favorite song of 2020 is not a song that was new in 2020. Jim, that's why I maybe threw that idea out to you.
Yeah.
However, it is a song that ended up on my radar because of something in 2020. That, of course, being the Wonder Woman 1984 trailer, which prominently featured Blue Monday by New Order. Ever since I heard that song in the Wonder Woman 84 trailer, it has probably been my most played track of 2020 and now 2021, if I'm being honest. In fact, it spurred me to create a whole like 80s emo grunge rock playlist, which I listen to over and over and over again. And that song, I think I put it on the playlist 4 times so that it plays multiple times. So that's how you know it's a song I'm super, super into. So, all right, moving on down the line. Favorite album, Jim? I don't think you had one. I will just say it's
they
very
still make
rare.
albums.
I know it's very rare for me that I have like a whole album that's a favorite anything. But Will, I know you've got one, so tell us a little bit about your pick here.
Yeah, and this was a hard category for me. You know, I was looking at like Run the Jewels for Fetch the Bolt Cutters by Fiona Apple, Fiona Bridgers, Punisher. But fuck it. And I never thought in a million years I would say the words I'm about to say, but the best album of the year was a Taylor Swift album. She came out with 2 albums this year. That Folklore and then Evermore, and I'm choosing Evermore, the second of them. It's the second of her albums, co-written by Aaron Dessner of The National, and it features artists like Dessner, Bon Iver, Haim, and this is like a maturing of Taylor Swift. She keeps her pop lyric like sensibilities, but she divorces that whole like teen heartbreak stories about like that are like super personal, and instead goes into storyteller mode. And she's like, she now has embraced the fact that she's 30 years old and she's telling these stories of heartbreak through this like fictional nostalgia lens. It suits her ability to tell stories so beautifully well. Dude, I listen to Evermore way more than I would be happy to admit. So yeah, fucking Run the Jewels 4 is great. I love a few of those Phoebe Bridgers songs, but I listen to Evermore like on fucking repeat.
Are you going to be listening to it ever more?
You know what?
Sounds like
it's already my most listened to album of like 2021 as well, so we'll see.
Okay, well, there you go. All right, awesome stuff. Moving on down to favorite video game. Jim, I know that Will and I are much more of what you would call gamers than you are, but did you have a favorite game of 2020?
I did, and this one goes back to I'm not a big gamer, as you know, and as you said, so it's a miracle that I played any kind of a video game this year. But the one game that I did play and I did enjoy because I enjoyed the original version of it is Myst VR. So this is the Myst game, been around forever, probably since the 90s, but now it's redone in a VR environment, and it looks amazing. Basically the same gameplay, although some of the puzzles are different. But you're basically immersed in this Myst world, which we know is spectacular anyway. So yeah, Myst VR. That's the one that is my favorite video game of the year, and the only one.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, for me, look, while Animal Crossing New Horizons was like the game of the first part of the pandemic, and probably could have made my list, and Among Us is the game of the second half of the pandemic, and also could have made my list. And Persona 5 Royale is the game that I spent the most time on, literally hundreds and hundreds of hours. The game that I think wove through the middle of those so beautifully for me was Final Fantasy VII Remake. This was a game that, honestly, it could have coasted on its name, right? It didn't have to be a gutsy game. It didn't have to make bold moves. It didn't have to redefine what it even is to be a remake of a successful game. And yet it did all of those things. It threw some curveballs narratively that for a remake, I now don't know what's going to happen with the next installment. And that's so incredibly exciting for me as a game player and a lover of narrative. So yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake is so fucking good.
FF7.
Well, I love that you called out Final Fantasy VII Remake because it was one of my top games of the year as well. God, it's so hard to wait for the next installment. I'm like low key mad that we didn't get it all at once. But then, if the other installments are as great as 7 Remake is, I'll be a patient person and wait for that because it's so great. For me, the best game of 2020 kind of squeaked in at the end of 2020. In November. You guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't hear you because my headset died, but I'll just finish up and then maybe you guys can finish us off. But this game came out at the end of 2020 when the PlayStation 5 released. This is Spider-Man Miles Morales. You can play that game on PS4, but I played it on PS5, and the graphics are fucking spectacular. It's great to have like practically no load times, like we had in the first Spider-Man game. Every time you rode the subway, you had to watch a cutscene that was cute at first, but by the 500th time, it was just like, really? Okay. Doesn't happen in this game. It's like instant. It blows my mind. But it was so awesome to get back to the world of New York City, Spider-Man. It all takes place right before Christmas, which really amped up my love of Christmas this year. It felt like I was visiting New York City at Christmas time. I also played it on a big projector and screen, which I think helped. But super immersive. Great to be back in the wall crawling world of the Spider-Men. This game does not really focus on Peter Parker, the main hero of the first game. This is all about Miles Morales and his story. And Miles is a fucking amazing character. And yeah, there you go. My favorite game of 2020.
Good pick. And we have one in the chat here from Hamstrack who says, is Bloodstained a 2020 game? I love Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and that one scratches all of the similar itches that Castlevania did. I don't remember when that one came out, if it was like late 2019 or early 2020, but fuck it. We are making it a decree right now. It is a 2020 game, and it counts. I'm a big Castlevania Symphony of the Night fan as well, and actually I haven't gotten to Bloodstained yet, so I need to. I remember all the hype for that one when it was first announced and kind of going through its kind of fundraising moment. So it's actually kind of a shame that I haven't pulled myself away from World of Warcraft long enough to play it. But unfortunately, I'm stuck in that black hole right now. Well,
there's a bunch of games there that all those last ones I have no clue what you're talking about, and that's on me. I just don't play the games much anymore. But are we ready to move on to the final category?
I think so, Jim. This is going to be our favorite pop culture moment.
Yeah, our favorite pop culture moment. And the one I picked is kind of strange, but the one that kind of stood out the most to me, other than a couple of other ones, which we might talk about later, was Tiger King documentary mania and everything around it, which was wildly popular back in early summer, I guess it was, of 2020, for all the wrong reasons. Just like everything on social media, this was like a microcosm of social media today. Just the documentary itself wasn't great, but I think the subject matter was just so wacky and off the wall that it created kind of its own media storm, social media storm. And to see that happen was pretty incredible. But yeah, Tiger King's documentary mania was my pick for favorite or most prevalent pop culture moment.
So that's a great one. That one was it was a moment. It was a moment.
It was definitely a moment.
For me, I chose something that absolutely gave me joy. And actually, there's two that gave me joy, but Brad and I think we both had the same one, so in a different direction. So there was this moment at the Oscars this year, bringing it back to movies, where Parasite, one of my favorite movies, definitely my favorite movie of that year, and literally one of the best films of the decade. It's just that good. It swept a bunch of categories and ended up winning Best Picture, and being like just after the previous year of Green Book, which was not for me, and just all of the disappointment that came out of that, there was this moment where it felt like just all of like the film people in my life were all united in just joy and excitement over this one moment that was happening, this movie that shouldn't have gotten like the big recognition that it did on the the biggest platform that there is. So I loved that, and especially loved it because if you think about it in the timeline of things, it feels like a lifetime ago. I mean, it was right before pandemic, and kind of everything changed. But it was this last like little moment of like, it felt like kind of triumph for myself and for a lot of people. So yeah, that's my choice. Jim, do you want to do Brad's?
Yeah, I will do Brad's. Brad's favorite pop culture moment was probably the biggest news moment of the year, and that was the election in which Joe Biden won the presidency, and everything that surrounded that. You talk about a storm on social media and the news and just in the public consciousness. That was the last 2 months of 2020, basically. It was kind of insane from just before election day to right to the end of the year, and into January, actually, with the inauguration and all that craziness. So yes, Joe Biden winning the election could also be the biggest hell yeah moment of the year as well. And also goodbye to a certain person's Twitter account was also part of that. And that brought a lot of joy to many of us. So so that was Brad's.
This was so much fun. This was just such a delight to be able to have this celebration of films and of moments and just everything. And I hate to bring it short, to bring us to a close, but it's that time. We've been doing this for almost a couple of hours now, but before we do, we need to talk a little bit about how you all can connect with us outside of the show. So Jim, can you tell our listeners how to find you?
Yeah, you can find me at JJP at West, just like down here. For those of you who can see it, it's at JJP at West on Twitter. That's where I talk about films. You can also find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico. And I'll also give you Brad, since he's not here to give you his. His is at iBradPro, just like iPad Pro, except iBradPro. And you can also find him on Facebook at under his name, Brad Harris.
And you can find me, Brad.
Oh my God.
I'm back. Okay. Windows and I are going to have a fight, fellas.
I just gave your contact info.
Oh, great. All right. Well, let me just personally say, sorry for all the technical issues, Microsoft. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This is always such a great episode to do. Jim, Will, I love coming up with these picks. Thank you so much for giving us a great opportunity to share those. I know I'm coming in at the 11th hour as we're sharing our social stuff. So, Will, if you want to go ahead and now that I've gotten to speak, please go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if you want to connect with me outside of the show, I'm on Twitter. I'm at Whatever Cove. You can see it right here on the screen, right beneath my beard. You can find me on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis. Please send me a message first. It just helps me know that you're a real person and not a bot. There are so many bots these days. And finally, I'm on letterboxd.com. If you search for William Lindis and add me there, it's a place where I rank and review every film that I see, and you can too. Give me a follow and I'll follow you back.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks so much. And Jim, I couldn't hear you guys. I think you already gave yours. Yes,
I did.
Cool.
I did.
All right, excellent. Well, we'll figure out what we're going to do next week. I think we've got a couple of different things we may potentially end up doing. But we'll figure that out, let you folks know what that's going to be. Thanks so much, everybody, for being with us on the show tonight, listening relative, to when we're recording. Maybe it's a year from now. Maybe it's 5 days from now. We love you just as much. And a great message to close us out for this week. James says, thanks to the Movie Bears podcast for getting us through Apocalypse 2020. James, we love and adore you on this show. Always fun to hear your thoughts on films. You're the reason we watch There's No I in Three-Way. And while I didn't like the movie that much, I like you a whole lot more.
That is a movie.
Well, thanks so much, everybody. It was great hanging out with you all. And man, this is episode 395. It's going to be the big 400 in just a few weeks. We're coming up on that. So if you have any cool ideas on what we can do to celebrate what you'd like to see, let us know.
Countdown of our favorite BDSM movies. Every Pixar movie
Oh.
ranked. I don't know. What is it?
Oh my
What are we
gosh.
doing? Let us know.
Oh man.
Ideas for a new Pixar BDSM movie. Whatever.
What?
A Pixar BDSM movie.
Sex toy story?
That's amazing. Sex toy story.
If
Okay.
anybody could incorporate BDSM into a movie and have it not be like obvious BDSM, it would be Pixar.
We'd have Buzzy instead of Buzz. We'd have Woody. Would still be
Woody is still good. You know, my favorite part is you could still get Randy Newman to come back and sing "You've Got a Friend in Me."
That's wonderful. And instead of forky, it could be fucky.
Yeah,
totally.
yeah, why
works.
not? Yeah.
It writes itself, right?
Or just keep it
So-
forky for the for the PG crowd. Yeah.
All right, everybody, we're getting out of here. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.